Welcome to the K2 Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Karen Kelly. Every week, I'll be sitting down with a sales executive where they'll share their stories and experiences that produce game-changing results. Let's be honest, sales can be a tough game. I'm sure at some point, we've all delivered a less than stellar demo, been ghosted by a client or two, and sometimes maybe we did more talking than listening. And that's where I can help. The stories and insights our guests share can be applied to your own business, your territory, or with your team, so you're not reinventing the wheel. Our weekly tactics and strategies help you get out of your head and start creating your own path towards game-changing results. Welcome back to the K2 Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Karen Kelly. Now, the goal of the show is to share game-changing stories that our guests are experiencing with themselves, their team, and just what they're seeing in the industry. Now, the transition from an individual contributor to a sales leader can be a tough one, but it can be a very rewarding one. And when you think about it, it really is a competing force between doing what you've done best your whole life, and that's selling and closing deals. And on the other hand, motivating, empowering, and developing your team to do it themselves. So I'm delighted to be speaking with Patrick Desmarais today, who's the director of sales with a global medical technology company. And Patrick's going to share his experience moving from that individual contributor role to a sales director role, and really the ups and downs, the lessons learned, and all the things that if you're considering that transition today, Patrick's story should help give you some insights and some tactics as to what you could be doing or even thinking about. So Patrick, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Karen. Thank you very much.
With what I do for a living, I think the biggest struggle is this transition, what we're going to be talking about today, just that sales rep moving to the sales leader and garnering the respect of your team, the credibility, and now leading through a pandemic. There's so many things. So I think this is always a very hot topic. I think it's very timely working through a pandemic. So just for the guests, why don't you just give us a little bit of context into, when did you start into sales and what did that transition to national sales director look like for you?
Sure. And going back, I started my sales career about 20 years ago. Had the opportunity to work as a sales rep with a couple of large organizations in a couple of different industries. So started with Xerox, which I would encourage anybody that's looking to start their sales experience to start there. Some of the lessons that you get working in that type of environment have been valuable in my career. And from there, I've transitioned to a couple different jobs within healthcare. Most recently, the organization I'm with now, I started about 10 years ago and spent the first about 7.5 years with this organization working as a sales rep covering Western Canada. And over the past couple of years, transitioned to a leadership role.
Okay. Well, I would agree. Xerox, I think, is the universally acclaimed, sales training and just great introduction to selling that people that have graduated from there carry those throughout their career. So I would agree with that. So 7.5 years of sales rep, of being a sales rep before the transition. So I'm just curious, when you think about moving or the transition, there's got to be the decision making to do that. So was there a pivotal point or time, or was it a gradual, just kind of like that itch, that change, like I want to do something different, or like I flex this muscle enough? Like, what did that look like, that decision-making process for you?
I would say that it's something that happened gradually. I think when I look back at my first few years within my role as a sales rep for this current company, you obviously want to onboard and get familiar with the inner workings of the organization that you're working with. I was fortunate at my time to work with a really great team, and we had a lot of success covering a smaller territory. So as my career developed within that organization, I started to think about ways that I could contribute more to the organization, and if there's things that I could do to help others that are in similar positions that I was across the country to get to where they wanted to be within their organization. So I think it was gradual in the sense that I think it started with a little bit of a more informal kind of mentorship or leadership of the actual team. And then I realized that I did actually have quite a bit of a passion. I was really enjoying the collaborative working with those individuals. So then I wanted to explore if there was an opportunity to get into a more into a leadership role.
That's great. So it sounded like you were already displaying some leadership qualities within the team just on your own, like taking initiative without the actual title.
I believe so. I mean, there was a couple of opportunities that came up that allowed me to take some of that informal role. We had a change in the leadership of our team, which left a little bit of a vacuum for several months. So it was an opportunity to kind of step in and meet an immediate need. So through that process, and I was fortunate because then I did get that opportunity to see if it was kind of something that I thought that I'd want to pursue more.
That's a good opportunity. You kind of had, a test run to see if is this something I really want to get into before, putting both feet in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but you know what I can say, Patrick, even though you had that opportunity and started displaying those qualities, not everybody would do that. Some people might just play it safe and I guess that's to each their own as well.
I came with I feel like my opportunity or where I was unique in the sense that I did have, like I had mentioned, there was a track record of success within the organization, which I think is an important part as you're looking to transition into a leadership role. I think it helps with credibility amongst the team. But I also think that it's important that if people are going to lead people that they've kind of walked in their shoes previously. So that was an important piece of feeling comfortable and confident to step into that role.
I would agree. I just think you have to, as you said, walk the walk. And I think 7.5 years, a good track record, allows you to do that. Because if you think about it, you're one day standing with your peers and their colleagues, and then the next day they're reporting into you. So it's kind of an overnight shift that if you almost haven't developed that credibility or they haven't seen perhaps, your past track record, you may not get the respect or the buy-in that you're looking for.
It was definitely one of the things that you need to consider as you're looking to transition into the role because it is quite different when you're providing kind of informal leadership or mentorship to someone as opposed to when they're actually a direct report. So I think that ability to be able to provide feedback and some of the other things that are a little bit more formal once you become actually um, a manager for somebody is quite different.
Yeah. And Patrick, when you were making the decision, did you reflect on maybe past leaders that you had that brought, that you have fond memories of or that really instilled some positive things in your life versus negative? And did you bring that or, charter that or take that in with you?
Definitely, I would say that I had a good opportunity to work with a wide variety of different leadership or under different variety of leadership types. So I can look back and I've had some pretty exceptional managers in the past, which I definitely have taken some of the experiences that I got from them and been able to incorporate. And I think I think it's equally important to reflect back at some of the situations that might not have been as positive and make sure that you're reflecting on that and what that meant to you when you were an actual sales rep and make sure that you're not running into those same actions to have that negative impact on your team.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And I think about, I've been in that situation as well. And you think about how it made you feel. And if you're going to invite that and repeat it, it's like, what are you doing here? You know that was a bad situation. So good for you for kind of recognizing that, that didn't make me feel I'm not going to bring that into the team. It's like parenting, right? So once you've made that decision, when you think about the journey, how did you prepare for it? So were you preparing before the informal opportunity came along? Were you reading books? Was this something you always aspired to? Or like, again, if people are thinking about it, like what are some things that you did to prepare that perhaps they could also leverage?
I would encourage everybody if they are thinking about making the switch from a sales rep into management to spend some time reflecting on why they want to make the change and really look at the things that they love most about being in sales and what they think that they will what will be their new responsibilities as a manager. Because I think that there were some things that I took for granted, for example. So I did do some work, just listening to a few podcasts and reading some articles. But really, the key to me was knowing that and asking questions of of some of my other mentors or bosses that I had along the way of what they enjoyed in those positions. And I think that those things matched up with what was fulfilling me the most out of my job.
That's great. I think you're right. Just surrounding yourself with like-minded people who are already doing the job and just asking those questions, getting curious, and I think not many people do that. What about you just mentioned your why, and I talk about this a lot when you think about Simon Sinek and really understanding your why, your purpose. And did you know your why? Like, did you understand like your real purpose, like the legacy you want to leave behind as you, because I'm sure your why as a sales rep would have been different as it is a leader. And the reason I ask this question is because when you think about, authenticity and vulnerability and purpose, leading with purpose, it all starts with you. So if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, then everything downstream is going to be kind of insincere and lack, being genuine with your team. So were you aware of your why, or did that come to you later?
I knew right away that I really um, enjoyed a collaborative environment and helping others. Um, and I had worked in different positions, some where I had excellent managers, mentors, and conversely, I worked in some positions where I didn't have that. And it made such a profound difference to not only my performance, but also my happiness in that role. So for me, really the why was what could I do to make sure that the rest of the team is supported, that they have clear guidance in what's expected of them, and that they have the tools and the knowledge to be able to execute on their expectations.
That's so amazing. And just Patrick, it says to me that you're others focused. Like, and I think that's the biggest challenge here. People are still focusing on themselves. And I think what you said before, this ties back into that. If you haven't achieved the goal or your track record, you're still competing because you haven't got that gold medal yet. But once you've got it, you can relinquish and you can actually be others focused. Give them the tools they want, give them the support, develop them, not hijack the conversation, because it's like, I've been there, I've done that. I'm now here to drive results through you.
Yeah, and I think it's such a fundamental part of sales management is making sure that you are focusing on the team and the individual, and not just on yourself. And like I mentioned before, I mean, it was one of the transitions I had to do when you're used to kind of running the show when you're the sales rep or the sales cycle. Sometimes you have to learn that you actually have to take a step back and allow people to learn for themselves and to develop that opportunity and conversation for themselves. And it's probably the most enjoyable part of my job is the actual coaching part of it, where you can see as people progress.
And was that a struggle initially? Again, just used to being in control, driving the show, and all of a sudden having to sit back and rely on them to do it, even if you're like, oh, you're taking this a totally wrong way, like, supporting them. Was that a struggle at times?
It was. I mean, it's one of the things that I probably took for granted is the ability to provide feedback in a way that was constructive and meaningful to people that had been your peers for a while. And then also realizing that there are countless ways to accomplish a goal, and everybody's going to get there in their own way. So it's really then just developing the process and making sure that people have the knowledge and the tools to get there, and giving them an opportunity to chart their path to get to that end goal.
I love that, because if you think about, I mean, that's diversity, right? And a lot of times when we try to do the answers or give the answers to them, it's like we stunt their growth, we stunt their development. So just say, yeah, we're all going to get there. Like, let's hear what your path is or what your thoughts are, because it might actually be better than yours, or it might introduce a different idea, a different perspective, a different way of thinking about it. And I think when we don't do that, we also how likely are they to raise their hand anymore? Because it's like, well, he's going to do it or she's going to do it for me. So we kind of stunt their growth and that free thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to what you said just a few moments ago about what's their why. And I think that realizing that everybody has different motivations and sees things through a different lens, it's important to understand that of the members of the team, because that information can help build a plan and a path forward for that individual.
Yeah, I think that's another game changer there is just you coach the individual, right? Because I'm sure you have a diverse team of experience. And, what's motivating one is not necessarily motivating the other. And even connecting with them on a personal level. Like, obviously, we want a paycheck, but there's more behind us. And really taking time to get to know the person. Because once you have that trust, that relationship, they know that you're in it for the right reasons, they're gonna bring in the results, for them, but also for you because they feel you genuinely have their back. So if you think about, we've talked about the decision, the preparation. Now you're in it, so you're in the role. So maybe walk us through like what that, on Friday I'm a rep, on Monday I'm a national director of sales. Like what did that overnight look like, and maybe some of the day to day like challenges that you went through initially.
The initial challenge for me was I had since I see 7.5 years in a job, you get a pretty good idea of your geographic territory, how things run. There's a cadence that you learn about how to deal with customers. So really, it was just going back to learning a whole new set of customers, but also learning how each rep schedules and sets out their time and their plan. When your peers and your just colleagues, sure, I'd worked with them and we did collaborated on some jobs, but a little less familiar with the exact way of how they schedule their things, what their goals are, what their plans are, and what they're trying to achieve, both what they want to get out of their business. So really, for me, it was just taking the time to understand their business, to understand them, and then to see if they felt that there were any roadblocks or things that were in their way that were impeding them from being able to do the job as they thought that they could. So really, it was just about learning the people and learning the business before I felt comfortable kind of interjecting on my opinions or my thoughts.
I think that's so smart, and I think, too many ego-driven people unlike you would do the reverse, and they just kind of insert themselves in, and that's the first way to, erode trust and not get the results you want. But I think just as you said, like taking a step back and just being the student for a moment and understanding your people, the way they work, the way they plan. And then, being able to offer some suggestions, some constructive feedback. But I think people that just go in like that, bull in a china shop, and it's just like that's still that dictator old way of doing leadership, and so it's really refreshing to see the approach that you took.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, and I think it gives an opportunity to build trust within the team fairly quickly as well. I think a simple question like asking, is there anything I can do to help, um, and getting that feedback from the team. If you don't follow through on it, then you will erode all that trust. But it really gives you an opportunity to find out what are the immediate things that the individual feels like they need, and see what you can do um, to help solve those problems. And I think it's an important thing because throughout this position, I've realized again the how vital it is for as a conduit between the sales team and other people within the organization. You're an important cog there, so sometimes you can get information for them pretty quickly and alleviate a lot of frustration amongst the team.
Big time. Yeah, it's exactly you're the middleman, right? You're in between the SLT, the senior leadership team. There's you, so the message flows both ways. But I think what you just said there, if you can prioritize their needs, and sometimes it might be just a phone call for you, but what it means to them is a huge, significant impact. But that gives you a quick win, and really, as you said, does
Yeah.
help build trust. What else would you say, Patrick, helped you build trust in those early days?
I would say important thing is just being willing to dive right in if they have a need. So we mentioned kind of, if there's something that you can do to help, but also in an account. So looking at some of the most difficult challenges that they have, whether it's a sales cycle that's stalled or they've been ghosted by a customer or just something that hasn't gone well, and offering to jump right in there and support them on those and to get those sales cycles going, and just offering a new perspective to a deal. I think sometimes we all get stuck or we get kind of tunnel vision with what's going on with a deal, and having an outside perspective and somebody that's willing to be actionable to that opportunity has helped build trust amongst the team.
And when you're supporting them, would you support them in the form of role playing or just being a sounding board, or what kind of support would you give them? Because we all know deals get choked in the pipeline, we get ghosted. So what kind of hands-on would you offer them from a coaching perspective?
It's funny that you say the word role play. I know a lot of people in sales have kind of a visceral reaction when they hear the word role play. But what I've seen is that people actually love doing it. It might just be the formality of the role play that they don't like, whether it be at a sales meeting or in front of some of their peers. So I think that's absolutely an important way to support the team. And it can be as informal as just calling somebody and being like, okay, what are you going to say today when you're calling that customer for an update? Let's just walk through it. And I think that builds a bond and a trust, because it gives an opportunity to brainstorm and for people to run through what they want to say. And they'll probably stop a few times along the way, but they'll get further in the long run, absolutely, for sure. So I think that is an important thing to continually do. And also just to be available. I like to think that I'm always available. I'm on the phone a lot, especially now when everybody's at home, but make sure that you get back to your people. You know, even if it's just a quick text acknowledging that that you missed their call and that you'll follow up with them when you're available, or pick up their call even when you're busy. I think that goes a long way with building trust amongst the team.
And you know, you expect them to do the same. I think you model the behavior. So if you're doing that to them, chances are they're doing that to their customers, right? Even if I don't have the answer, just want to acknowledge I got your message. I'll have something with you before the end of the day tomorrow. Something like that. But I think if you're modeling it, you're showing them what the expectations are.
Yeah, absolutely. Nobody likes to send a text and not even get a response or acknowledgement, or same with a phone call or email. So I think it's polite, and I think it's the right thing to do to let people know that you're acknowledging them.
Yeah, I do. And I also think in times like this when people are, you know, caught up, they're in their home office, they probably haven't seen you in months. And there might be some in your head a little bit going, where do I stand here? Some insecurities about, you know, how am I performing? And then all of a sudden my boss doesn't get back to me. So there could be a little bit of mental health there that starts being exasperated by that lack of communication.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I hadn't actually considered that, but I think it is an important consideration, because we are all missing out on the personal touch of seeing individuals and working together and getting kind of face-to-face feedback and interactions. That's a very good point.
So just to build on that, like how have things changed? I mean, you started in this role before COVID, but like now you're managing remotely. You might have onboarded remotely. So what has changed from a leadership standpoint? Obviously, you still need to build trust, but now you have to do it with a layer of technology between you. So what kind of things have changed for you as a leader as a result of working through the pandemic?
I think that a lot of people get into sales, and I know it's the same for many members on my team, because they crave that social interaction, and they like how different each day can be in visiting different customers. And I think that through the pandemic, a lot of that has gone away. So we still speak to multiple people, but the amount of information that's being bombarded on everybody is quite a lot. So I would say the biggest change in terms of myself is trying to work with the team to find new ways and strategize about whether or not how to continue to move the business forward, but how to engage customers, how to work with team members to make sure that people are still feeling like they're connected to people, and to basically understand that we're going to get back to normal at a certain point. So we need to plan for what the other side of this looks like as well.
And I think that's great, Patrick. And I just think, you know, a lot of sales leaders that are engaging and motivating and trying to keep that connection going with their team. You know, this is what, a year and a half. So the bag of tricks is getting a little bit old, and you know, the icebreakers and the ordering lunch, and it's hard, I would imagine, trying to keep it fresh and keep it engaged so they're not just rolling their eyes, or not turning their cameras on.
You brought up another good point when you say the new normal. It's going to be interesting coming out of this, because I think that the reps and the organizations that can drive the most amount of value for customers are the ones that are going to have the most success. I think customers going forward are going to have some reasons to not see certain reps. So unless you're focusing on their needs and bringing value to them, I think access is going to become a little bit more difficult. So we're really focusing with the team to look at ways that they can make sure that they're bringing value on every interaction that they're having with customers.
Yeah, and I think that's been a fundamental of sales, but I think the challenge now, well, and access is a huge challenge, especially in healthcare. But now it's delivering value, but in a virtual environment. So maybe not in the face to face. And when you look
Yeah.
at Gartner, there's so many stats on what CSOs are doing to really revamp their team on the technology, on the virtual selling skills, because it's not the same. And for those who are just flicking on their camera and approaching it as if it were a face to face, like, you're not going to add value to your client, because it's not. So great, all great points there. And yeah, I would imagine your job has not been easy, and I'm sure you're excited to kind of open the floodgates again and have these humanized connection both with your clients and your sales team.
I can't wait. And if you look, I mean, I think that we have hopefully just a couple more months left until we can start seeing people face to face again.
Well, I'm hoping weeks, but maybe
I'm hoping you're right.
Maybe I'm just too optimistic. I just wanted to touch on a few things here. So when you think about, I'm a big Brene Brown fan, and, she always talks about servant leadership and vulnerability. And I just wanted to get your take on, on one hand, having difficult conversations. So how do you have difficult conversations? And on the other hand, like, how do you balance vulnerability, knowing that you're new to the role, but also knowing that, you're trying to be relatable to your team, and letting them know that I don't have all the answers. So, like, those are kind of two very extreme challenges. So do you want to talk a little bit about how you manage being vulnerable as well as having difficult conversations?
I'll start with the difficult conversations first. I think that is probably one of the hardest adjustments for me personally coming through into this leadership position. It's been something, and it's funny. You can read lots of books on leadership. There's tons of information on there, but there's not as much information on actually how to be a good sales manager. At least that I found that deals into the topic. So you have to approach everything from an honest perspective. Now, again, the experience that I had within the organization, I think, built a significant amount of credibility for me to have those difficult conversations. So I think that's been instrumental. But looking back again and reflecting on some of the things that I had learned in a similar situation where I'm giving feedback, and trying to understand the reason why some of the decisions might have been made that you're giving feedback, or how you've come to that point. So it's really observing kind of past experiences, and then taking the time to reflect back before just jumping into those conversations. And then, just like in sales, it's about asking questions first before you're giving that feedback, because sometimes the inclination is just to give immediate feedback, but you need to understand where that person was coming from before you can provide valuable feedback.
I think that's huge. And that's just that seek to understand first, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I don't know how many people do that, Patrick. They just, not everybody, but they do jump in and offer, if it's not the way I would have done it, it's wrong.
Yeah, and that doesn't come naturally for me. So you have to pause and kind of take a deep breath and remember to ask the question first, because inherently my first inclination, especially at the beginning, was just to provide feedback first.
Yeah, I think that's key. And you know what? I share that struggle as a coach. I know the answer, but I have to pause and flip it back and say, what do you think? Because we're all sitting on it, but it doesn't help them if I give them the answer, right?
Yeah. And then the second part, sorry, I don't want to pass over the second part about vulnerability. I'm not embarrassed if I don't know the answer to a question. Again, it comes back to um, if you don't know, you need to follow up and find that information and give it back to the rest of the team. If not, some of the trust will erode. But I think that I can help build a culture where by me not knowing the answer all the time, then the people won't be afraid to ask questions. You know, what I don't want is people not coming to me with a concern or with a question because they think it might be a dumb question, or they might think that, you know, I feel like they should know the answer. So I think it's okay if everybody doesn't know everything all the time. There's so much information. So again, that's where building a collaborative environment, I think, is good. And we have a really strong team that, you know, different people know different things, and just getting everybody to work together to answer those questions.
Oh, I love all of that. I think your job is to really to create that safe environment, and by you not having the answer and being completely transparent and saying that, what you're doing in essence is you're inviting them to get like what would you guys do? And that's that collaboration that you're looking for. So that next time it's not going to be, well, this is the Patrick show. It's like, well, let's hear what you guys have to say because I only bring in one piece of the pie. What else do we have? Different perspectives, different thoughts. And people are going to bring different ideas based on their background, based on their level of experience, and just based on what they're seeing in the industry. So I think that really promotes collaboration and cross thinking and even peer learning. Like if you can pair up somebody who's very experienced with a junior person, you're both going to learn there.
Absolutely, and I think that we've done a really good job of creating that safe environment. We have an opportunity once a week to meet. Right now, it's virtually. To just chat. Like there's a few things on the agenda, but the amount of kind of brainstorming and sharing of ideas and collaboration that we get from that one meeting, especially if everybody's feeling a little bit isolated, has been invaluable to us.
So, Patrick, if people are thinking about, as I mentioned before, making the transition, what are some characteristics or attributes that you think, these are game changers? Like you really, if you don't have these, start working on them, or if you have them, start accelerating them. What are some things that you feel make a great leader?
Well, I think the first thing is I think you do need a track record of performance. I think in order to be considered for a leadership job, I think that goes without saying that there needs to be a little bit of a consistent track record there. I think a willingness to work with a team and realizing that you're going to serve a different group of people. So I went from, while the client's first and foremost always in our mind, I went from a role where I was primarily serving the client into a role now where I'm serving the people that serve the client. So was really looking and working on those skills to see what it was like. And then exploring the reasons why you want to get into the job. And if you think that your skill sets can match some of those things that are necessary. We've already talked about providing feedback, but then also looking at what the difference between training and coaching is. That is something that my eyes open to a lot. I probably came into this job thinking that they were the same, and I actually think that they're quite different. So looking at how you would approach those. So I think those are the things for me as I transitioned really that were important.
That's great. Those are an amazing list. And just as you said, you're used to serving the client, and now you support your team to serve the client. Like, was there a little bit of ego there going, it's hard to let go because I used to do that so easily, and now I have to sit back with my hands behind my back and kind of watch you. Was there a little bit of an ego there or not?
Absolutely. If we look at it, still to this point, I feel like sometimes I need like a rubber band on my wrist or something to snap. I feel like jumping it, but it is still challenging, and I am getting better at it. It's something that I've definitely acknowledged, but it's hard if you're used to kind of driving the conversation and really stepping back and just participating and supporting your team member. But no, that is definitely was a transition.
Yeah, and thank you for your honesty there, because I see that a lot, and it's hard, right? It definitely is hard. I think what's important after is the debrief and really just walking through the call, and just for me, one of the things that I would add to that list is the self-awareness piece, both as a leader and inviting that on your team, because just for that past example, if you're sitting back and coaching and there's a missed opportunity or a missed example of storytelling of something, and inviting them to reflect on what went well, what could they have done differently, but getting them to come up with that first kick. Because if you just sit quietly and ask those questions, and sometimes you have to nudge them, like they're gonna know, and they're gonna then create the habit that start being reflective after each call to say, like, what did I miss or what did I do well. But that's where your job comes in. If you can hush up and let them do it and just ask those questions, you're helping to improve their self-awareness.
Absolutely, and it's something that I think that reflection is extremely important, and it's something that I know is an opportunity for me, and it's something I work on every day now, because I think in a lot of aspects of what we do, there's again so much information, and we're so busy running from one email to another, or one call to another, or Zoom meeting. So really being able to set aside some time to do some reflection, um, and then look at different opportunities, like either coming out of a sales call, if you get, positive or negative feedback from a customer, with either through a purchase order or told that you didn't win the business, is really reflecting on the reasons why you did so, because let's look to replicate some of the things that are working, and learn from some of the things that aren't.
Absolutely. I think that's huge in the process, and just like double down on what is, but understand why where is that bottleneck, and is it, usually you're coaching to will or skill, so where do I start? And a lot of companies now through the pandemic are saying, we're crushing it and we're killing it, and I'll say, well, what do you attribute this to? Well, I don't know, but the sales are coming. And you just think, well, how can you repeat that?
Yeah,
Where in the process are you winning? And the other side is some people are ready to shut their doors, and it's like, well, where do you think? Well, I don't know. And it's like you have to really peel back and look at your the buyer's journey, and where is there a bottleneck, and pinpoint that, because it might not be everything, but I think just having that visibility and clarity in order to make the tweak, make the fix, and then carry on.
absolutely. And I think by doing consistent, constant reflection, hopefully you can catch if there's trends that are happening a little bit sooner than waiting till maybe it's too late.
Absolutely. It's the same as, the results. There's lagging indicators, like, well, that's too late. We've lost the business. Like, what can we do proactively to really get close to see, like, what are we doing well as a team? What am I doing well as a leader? And really just getting introspective as well. And I know what you're saying in corporate, when you are pulled. I mean, I did it for 20 years, and you're pulled from meeting to meeting, and you actually don't even have 5 minutes to go to the bathroom, that you're like, never mind,
Mhm.
reflect on how that meeting went. You're almost sometimes reactive, and you show up to the next meeting with no time to prepare because you were back to back. And it's kind of madness that you have to carve out time. And I think this is where, some self-care comes in, and just say, look, if I'm going to be an effective leader, I need to carve out some time for myself to really reflect.
Yeah, and I'm sure everybody will handle it differently. I know for me, it was just a matter of, as soon as I get up in the morning, I go to a quiet place, and I don't bring my phone with me, anything, and I make sure that the first thing that I do in the morning does not involve a piece of technology, and that's helps me start my day with a lot more focus.
I love that. And intention, just putting into it what you want to get in. Otherwise, I think, you open yourself up to being hijacked by everybody. And at the end of the day, you look at what you've gotten done, and it's probably not as much as you would have liked to. Well, Patrick, you've shared so many insights, and your story and your journey to get to where you are today. So I want to thank you for that. And I just want to help the audience now. Again, if people are in similar situations, or they're contemplating taking this jump, can you give them three things that they could start doing today that will really help them, either whether it's mindset or something tactical, to really start getting them prepared for that shift to sales leadership?
I think that the first thing is be curious. Be curious in the sense of find um, someone or a few people that are doing a similar job, that are in a sales leadership job, and try to get out of them all the things that they love, and that they might not like as much about doing that job. I think that's important. Um, build a list. I think that it's really important to actually spend the time to realize why you are getting or why you're looking to make the change. Um, and then last of all, I would make sure that the organization that you're working for knows that you're interested in potentially taking on a leadership role. Um, I have some friends that have not been promoted within jobs, and we've had conversations, and I've asked a simple question: do they even know that you want to do this? And they don't. So I think by making it known that you're interested in pursuing a different job within your organization, if it is within your organization, let them know, because they might identify as well some things that they want you to work on. And you'll be able to build a career plan to make that jump and potentially identify some gaps that need to be filled.
I think those are all amazing and very tactical. So, those of you who are listening, who are contemplating or wanting to take this shift, Patrick's suggestions is first, be curious, really start asking questions to those already doing the role. Number two, know your why. Why do you want to do this? Is it for the paycheck, or do you actually want to help people? And three, visibility. Make sure they know. Otherwise, they're not mind readers. So make sure they know, and they can probably help you along the path as well. So thank you so much for this, Patrick. If there's anyone who wants to connect with you and perhaps ask more questions or learn a little bit more about your journey, what's the best way for them to do that?
I'm on all social media platforms, so LinkedIn is probably the best. So you can find me. It's Patrick Desmarais on LinkedIn. That's probably going to be the easiest way to find me.
Okay, and I'll include all that in the show notes. So again, Patrick, thanks so much for sharing your journey. I think it was a great experience for me to hear everything you've went through and the great impact you're having on your team. And I know it's going to help a lot of other people who are considering the jump and maybe find that it's very daunting to know that there were some surprises and some learnings, and that it's a continual learning journey. It's never learning never dies.
No, absolutely. It's what I love about it. I really conversation. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in today. And if you enjoy the show, please subscribe to the podcast or watch it on the YouTube channel. Feel free to like and share it with someone you feel would benefit from the show. So thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.